Now that we've talked about hiring service writers, let's talk about the challenge of hiring technicians. And this is an age-old challenge in this industry. There's no simple or easy way of doing this. Essentially, technicians, they can be a funny bunch, as you know. And hiring technicians, you don't always know what you're getting. So the same hiring rules apply. Don't be afraid to do more than one interview with a technician. Put word out through your tool representatives, through your parts representatives, and anybody else you know within the industry. Don't go shopping for technicians. Don't attend training classes just to get in there and talk to technicians and try to steal somebody away from another shop. You really don't want that reputation because that's going to bring your business down. But don't be afraid to put word out through those that travel the area. Now, what are you looking for in a technician? And most service managers, when I ask them that, or shop owners, when I ask those folks, they say, I want somebody experienced, I want somebody motivated, I want somebody that can turn a wrench and make me some money. Well, okay, but a lot of technicians are a lot of talk too. And you've got to be able to weed out what you're getting. Just looking at a resume doesn't give you that. Even in an interview, it's really tough to know what you're getting for a technician, and that's the challenging part. You can know more what you're getting in a service writer through one or two interviews than you'll ever know in interviewing a technician. Beware the technicians that tell you how good they are. In my experience, a technician that tells you how good they are, they're probably not. They're probably average at best. You're going to want to ask about experience, about education, about attitudes more than anything. Because what I've observed in 25 years of being in this business is that technician attitude is everything. The technicians that have a very positive attitude, that are willing to help, willing to learn, motivated, want to see the shop do well, those are the technicians that do more good for you, even if they're not as productive, as somebody who's turning 150% efficiency, but he's poisonous out in the shop. He's got a bad attitude, he's got a bad temper, he doesn't want to help anybody, etc., etc. So what do I look for in a technician then? Because that's kind of a tall order, right? First of all, I want somebody who's willing to learn. I'll ask them in the interview, how do you feel about training? What's the best technical training you've ever had? And get them talking. And you get them talking about training, and you'll start to figure out whether they're willing to learn or not. I want somebody who is technically savvy. I want somebody who's not afraid of a computer. Whether I use an electronic repair order system or not, I might ask them, how do you feel about electronic repair orders? Just to see what they tell me. I may have no intention to use an electronic repair order system ever. I'm going to stick to my paper. I'll stick to my notepad. But I want to know how they feel about it, because that will tell me how they feel about using electronics in general. I want somebody who does a lot of reading, believe it or not, because technician's skill set is not dependent on what they did 20 years ago. It's not dependent on what they did 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Technician's skill set is completely dependent on the basics and their ability to keep up with technology. As a technician, you rarely ever are in an environment where you get enough training to stay up with technology. In a dealership environment, you come close. In an independent environment, you rarely even come close. Technicians have to read. They have to keep up on their own more than anything. So I'm looking for somebody that does that. I'm looking for somebody who does something in their spare time, maybe related to working on cars. It tells me that they're really into what they do. But be careful. If it's somebody who is a crew on a stock car on the weekends, well, okay, if he goes racing stock cars, does he know anything about the cars that are in my shop today? If it's somebody that is into remote controlled cars, maybe, because those guys tend to keep up with technology. So think about what questions you're asking. Think about what they do in their spare time and how it relates to what you do. Just being into cars isn't enough. If they would rather work on roadsters or muscle cars or old school stuff, that might be a red flag. I might rather have somebody who's into gaming that can understand new scan tools and understand new network systems that are coming down the road, and maybe have the base to learn from in those systems. So be thinking about what exact skills you want to see them have. Now, one aspect of a technician that to me is really, really important because of what I'm about to say in a couple of minutes, and that is the ability to mentor others. If I get somebody in my shop who's a straight, hardcore, flat rate technician and looks at everybody else in the shop as his or her competition, and all they want to do is produce the maximum number of hours, and maybe they're 140% efficient, 150% efficient, whatever, but they're not willing to work with anybody, I don't want them. They might make me money, they might drive some productivity, but my first question is, how are they driving productivity? And it makes me nervous because I'm going to have to watch them and figure out how they're driving productivity. Because somebody that's pushing 150%, I want to know how they're doing it. And secondly, if they're that busy that they can't help mentor and bring other technicians up in the shop, I might think twice about that. So really be thinking about where in that mix you want that technician to be. Remember, in your shop, you don't want every one of your bays filled with a master technician. It might be tempting and it might sound good, but you don't want that because you don't want a $24 an hour guy doing oil changes. There's no profit in that. You'll lose money doing that. So think about when you have somebody leave, think about what mix you have in the shop, who can move up, and where you want to fill what spot. Okay, so there's a lot more to hiring a technician than just finding somebody that's got 20 years experience and used to work for whoever in the area. Now, with all of that said, and with the challenges acknowledged in hiring technicians, I encourage you to grow your own technician. You say, grow my own technician. It's not quite like planting seeds and growing a technician, but it's similar. The seeds that you plant are seeds planted with a local high school or college automotive program. Go speak to the local high school or college automotive instructor. Find out what internship or co-op programs they have. Find out what types of kids that they generally produce. Let them know you're interested in taking on a co-op student or an intern. And it doesn't matter to me whether it's here at the desk or back there in the shop. What I'm looking for is potential. What I'm looking for is an individual that I don't pay a whole lot of money to, if any money at all, who can learn my organization at a young age while I figure out what I have. And if I see somebody who's young, who's got a ton of potential, who's learned my operation, my organization, then I might be in a position to say, hey, when you graduate from whatever program it is, why don't you come see me? I'd be interested in hiring you. Now you get somebody who's a known entity. It's not somebody who walked in off the street that I had to pay $20 an hour to discover, oh my word, they don't fit here. This just isn't going to work. No, if the intern doesn't work or the co-op student doesn't work, it's short-lived. It might only be 3 weeks, it might only be 6 months. Whatever it is, didn't cost you much money, and you know they're moving on anyway. Now that's the drawback to growing your own, is you're going to have a revolving door of intern technicians or co-op technicians. Be patient. That's okay, because you're going to find a good one. Now, take it back to the technician that I hire. That's the other reason I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking for somebody that can work with these young kids. Because if I want to grow my own technicians so that I don't have to collect resumes and interview for the next 30 years to run my business, I need somebody in my shop who I can trust to help mentor these kids. We'll talk about technician pay plans that can help with that in a few minutes. But think about what you want in a technician specifically. Think about where you can go to get them and ask all the questions it takes to figure out, do I have somebody with the potential or not? But never forget that mentoring piece. And growing your own technicians is by far the best way of doing it. It takes time, it takes patience, but you will be rewarded for it.